Welcome to Adobe Think Tank. Again, follow along with the conversation at hashtag AdobeTT. Join with me, Roger Chen, co-founder and CEO of Computable Labs. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got some comfy furniture. We got an 8-minute conversation. This should be fun.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about what Computable Labs is doing kind of with the crowdsourced workforce.
Yeah, so I mean, at the center of it all is sort of just this core motivation of us wanting to open up as much accessibility to data as possible. And the reason for that is we see data as this resource that's really driving the universe, right? Both from a business perspective, but also from a societal perspective. So having open access to that is this incredible lever that we have to create progress. And just way too often we find that it ends up getting bottled or siloed away. So coming up with new technologies and products to get people to share, to encourage people to share.
Yeah, and what's the single most compelling reason then for enterprise to kind of, work on that?
It's a good question. I think data is often a very competitive advantage for enterprise. We all get that, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I do think that in addition to having proprietary data as an enterprise, it actually will help every company within an industry if there was also a universal data commons for that industry to contextualize proprietary data. So it depends what kind of information you're talking about, but I think having those two layers combined is incredibly powerful. So for example, in the field of genomics, if you had a lot of verticalized proprietary data, from research that you do in-house, but you also have access to a broad-based population set of data for population genomics, right, genetics data, that would be incredibly unlocking for everybody that's in that space, and just a very non-zero-sum value creation for an entire industry.
You have a really interesting thesis on opening access to data to everyone. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, obviously we know why it's important, but kind of how do we get there?
Yeah, so I'm a semi-idealist, but also semi-pragmatist, and I believe in this vision of opening up as much access to data as possible. The reality is, in order to scale, it has to align with good economics, right? I'm a big believer in the power of free market incentives and motivations, and really scaling industries and ideas. And for me, the idea was very simple here. The idea was, well, if we made it worthwhile for people to share data, then maybe we have something there, right? And I think worthwhile means a couple things. One, it means that you give people a sense of ownership, right, in the data that they source, that they structure, that they curate, that they bring together and make available for the public, so that when there are future profits made from that data, the distribution of those profits go fairly to the people who help bring that data together. And the other is just this notion of privacy and security. I think there are actually a lot of people who are interested and get this concept of, hey, let's exchange data, let's pull our data sets together. But there's this understandable fear that if I lose control of this data, then that's not good for me. So is there a way to transact data in a way where you can still access to it? You can train machine learning models, you can train AI models without handing your raw data away. And we believe there are a bunch of privacy and security and distributed systems technologies that we're developing to hopefully enable that future.
I like the pragmatism as part of it because, if there are a few places controlling a lot of data, right, you got to give them a compelling reason to kind of open things up, right? So, kind of just talk to me practically about how do you think we can make that happen in the next year or two or beyond? Maybe more the optimistic part, right?
Yeah.
Where we could get to.
So, I think we kind of define our work in a couple phases. The longer term phase will be this universe where you're able to do a transaction without compromising control of your data asset, and I think that'll be powerful. In the more near term, even this year, what we're doing is we're really trying to solve the code start problem for collaborative data projects. And let me give you an example, actually. So, are you familiar with ImageNet? So it's, for those who aren't, it's a data set that was brought together that really unlocked incredible progress and value for machine learning AI-based computer vision techniques. Now, that was done on the backs of a professor at Stanford and her students really working hard to bring that data set together. Now, what if you had a way to incentivize the collaborative construction of those kinds of data sets for all sorts of fields and disciplines, right? Because you can say on day one that anyone that contributed to this online repository of information of training data for whether it's audio applications or self-driving car applications, anyone that contributed ended up getting proper ownership in a data set like that, right? And then therefore, when industry does buy access, does train models, you get not only attribution but potentially profit sharing to people that help construct that data set. So we think like establishing that new primitive of ownership is a powerful thing that we can do even today in order to bring some of these data sets together.
That's a powerful example about getting people involved and kind of accessing and leveraging early adopters, right? But again, it comes back to that compelling reason at the offset, right? So, what other compelling reasons can you give people to kind of engage?
Again, I would say, what are all the industries or kinds of data where there really isn't a need for fragmentation, right? So I'll give you another example. We talked about genomics a little bit earlier. I think that's one. I think there should be a universal layer of genetics data for genomics researchers to do their research off of, right? And they're still competitive, they'll still compete to build products, but that universal layer at the bottom is enabling for everybody. Another thing I think about is, for example, weather, right? Weather, there shouldn't be multiple weather networks and multiple types of weather data, right? No,
multiple opinions on weather, right?
In New York City, it is this hot and it's this humid. Now, if you had a way to create a single network where you could crowdsource that information and have that network data be available just through an API on the web to power applications for industry, for researchers, individuals, hackers, who knows. I just think that's an incredibly powerful thing you can do just to unlock innovation. And the list goes on, right? But that's the way I would frame it. What are the kind of types of data sets where you really ought to have this one universal layer, right? And then how do you properly reward people to help bring that together in a crowdsourced fashion?
And the practical application of that stuff, like with weather and everything, is super fun. But thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, go to AdobeThinkTank.com if you want to follow along and you get more information. But thank you for joining us.